The island of Sicily in the 6th century BCE was a land caught between brilliance and terror. Its cities thrived with trade and art, but shadows lurked behind marble temples and bustling marketplaces. The most infamous of these shadows would be born under the rule of a man named Phalaris. Phalaris was not merely a tyrant, he was a ruler who craved control through spectacle. His power rested not only on swords, but on fear. To him, the loyalty of the people could never be trusted unless it was enforced through unforgettable horror. It was during his reign in Agrigentum that the seed of one of history's most grotesque inventions was planted. He desired a device that would not just kill, but humiliate, terrify, and leave its memory imprinted upon all who heard of it. Death, to Phalaris, was not enough. He wanted theatre. Enter Perilos, a craftsman from Athens. He was famed for his skill in bronze work, able to mold metal into shapes that seemed alive. Phalaris summoned him with promises of wealth and recognition. Yet behind the invitation lay a darker command. The tyrant asked Perilos to create a machine of execution unlike any other. It should be a work of art and an instrument of torment. It should awe the citizens with its form, yet silence them with dread when they imagined its function. Perilos, driven by ambition, agreed. In his workshop, the clang of hammer against bronze echoed for weeks. The vision he shaped was that of a great bull, its body hollow, its sides gleaming with polished bronze. To the casual eye, it was a magnificent statue meant to honor the gods or adorn the city. But inside it was a chamber of death. A door, small yet firm, was hidden in its side. Through it, a man or woman could be forced within. Once the door was locked, the condemned would find themselves imprisoned in darkness, surrounded by walls of metal. At the base of the bull, space was left for fire. The heat would rise, searing the bronze, and the chamber would become an oven. The victim would be roasted alive, trapped within the beast's gleaming shell. Their flesh would sizzle, their screams would echo. Perilos, however, added a final touch of cruelty. Pipes and tubes were built into the bull's head, designed to transform human cries into something grotesque. As the victim screamed, their voice would emerge from the bull's mouth in a sound like the roaring of an enraged animal. To onlookers, it would seem as though the bronze beast itself was alive, bellowing in pain and fury. What was agony for the condemned became entertainment for the tyrant. It was not execution, it was a performance of fire and sound. When the work was done, Perilos presented it to Phalaris with pride. The tyrant inspected the bull, running his hands across the smooth bronze surface. It gleamed under the Sicilian sun, a mixture of artistry and menace. Phalaris smiled. He saw not just a weapon, but a symbol, something that would ensure his name would echo through generations. But as he admired the creation, he asked a chilling question. "How," he said, "will the sound truly carry like the bellow of a beast? Show me." Perilos, eager to prove his invention, explained the mechanism in detail. He boasted of the pipes, the chambers, the way the screams would be distorted. He claimed that it would transform the cries of the dying into music that pleased the ear. But Phalaris was not satisfied with mere explanation. He demanded a demonstration. And here ambition turned to horror. The tyrant ordered that Perilos himself test the invention he had so carefully crafted. Guards seized the bronzesmith and dragged him toward the bull. He protested, insisting he had only built the device, not meant to endure it. Yet his pleas fell on deaf ears. The tyrant's word was final. They forced him into the hollow chamber, locking the door tight behind him. Perilos was plunged into suffocating darkness, surrounded by the cold touch of metal that would soon become unbearable heat. Beneath the bull, the fire was lit. Flames licked at the bronze, and the chamber began to glow with rising heat. Inside, Perilos screamed. At first his voice was human, desperate. But as the air grew hotter, as his flesh began to blister and burn, the pipes carried his cries outward. To the crowd gathered, it was no longer Perilos they heard. It was the roaring of a beast, the sound of something both animal and divine echoing through the square. The bull bellowed just as the tyrant had demanded. Phalaris stood watching, his face lit by the reflection of flames on bronze. He listened to the sound with cold fascination. The crowd shuddered, realizing the device was more terrible than anything they had ever imagined. Inside, Perilos writhed and burned. His skin cracked, his body convulsed, and the chamber filled with the stench of roasted flesh. Every moment dragged on, a symphony of agony twisted into the roar of the bull. At last, the door was opened. Smoke poured out, and what remained of the craftsman collapsed lifeless to the ground. His ambition had been his doom. The invention he had hoped would secure his fame had instead sealed his fate. Phalaris, unmoved, declared the bull a masterpiece. From that day onward, it became his chosen instrument of terror. Those who opposed him, those who disobeyed, those who even whispered rebellion, he promised them the bull. And word spread quickly. Across Sicily and beyond, people spoke of the bronze monster that devoured men in fire and thunder. The Brazen Bull became a legend, a tale of horror that silenced rebellion before it could begin. But for the people who lived under Phalaris, it was no legend. It was a reality they feared each day. The sight of the gleaming bull in the square was enough to crush hope and keep the city bound in silence. The tyrant had achieved what he desired: control through spectacle, obedience through fear. And at the heart of it all stood the bull, shining in the sunlight, waiting for its next victim. The bull stood in the marketplace of Agrigentum, its bronze hide gleaming beneath the Mediterranean sun. For some it was a statue, artful, majestic. For others, it was a nightmare cast in metal, a constant reminder of what happened to those who defied Phalaris. Every whisper of rebellion died when eyes fell upon the beast. The people knew its roar was not myth, but truth. They had heard the sounds that poured from its mouth, the screams reshaped into the bellow of an animal. The memory of Perilos' death haunted them. Phalaris wasted no time in making the bull his stage. The tyrant understood that one death could be hidden, forgotten, but repeated deaths would carve fear deep into the hearts of his people. He gave the order. Every traitor, every criminal, every dissenter would be fed to the bull. The square became a theater of dread. Soldiers dragged the condemned before the crowd, binding their hands, ignoring their cries of innocence. The bronze door creaked open, and the victims were pushed inside. Once sealed, the bull looked whole again, as though it was only a statue awaiting worship. Then came the fire. Flames were fed with wood and oil until they licked high beneath the belly of the beast. The bronze heated glowing red at its edges, and inside, the chamber became a furnace of suffering. The victims' screams rose, distorted by the pipes. To the audience, it was no longer the voice of a man or woman, but the howling of a monstrous bull. Children cried, elders turned their faces away, and yet all were forced to witness. Phalaris relished it. From his throne, carried to the square for the occasion, he sat unmoving, his eyes fixed upon the bull. He called it justice. He claimed it was necessary for order. But beneath those words was something darker: delight. Soon the bull was no longer just an instrument of punishment. It became ritual. Festivals were marked by executions. Victories in war were celebrated with the burning of captives. The people were told it was sacrificed to the gods, but they knew it was a display of tyranny. The air of Agrigentum grew heavy with dread. Merchants sold their goods in silence. Families spoke in hushed tones. Every neighbor was a potential informer. Every careless word a possible death sentence. The shadow of the bull silenced not just rebellion, but life itself. The screams that poured from its mouth were unforgettable. They carried through the streets, echoing against stone walls, searing into memory. For those who listened, they were not the cries of strangers. They became the imagined voices of brothers, sisters, fathers, and friends. In time, the bull consumed not only the guilty, but the innocent. Phalaris needed no proof, no trial. A glance that displeased him, a word spoken too boldly, even dreams of freedom, these were enough to condemn. The tyrant's paranoia filled the bull as much as the firewood. Stories spread among the people. Some claimed the gods themselves wept at the cruelty. Others said the earth trembled beneath Agrigentum, rejecting the stench of burning flesh. Priests who once blessed the tyrant began to fear that divine wrath would strike the city, yet still the bull roared. Farmers passing through the city heard its bellowing voice and carried tales back to their villages. Sailors in Sicilian ports repeated the stories across the seas. Soon, even beyond Sicily, The name of Phalaris was synonymous with terror. But tyranny has a way of sowing its own destruction. As the years passed, the number of those who hated Phalaris grew. Fear silenced their tongues, but hatred burned quietly, as steady as the fires beneath the bull. One by one, families who had lost loved ones began to dream of vengeance. Soldiers who once served the tyrant grew weary of his cruelty. The bull that had frightened the people was also the symbol of their suffering, and in silence, they waited for a chance to see it overturned. Even within the court, whispers stirred. Advisors and guards, forced to watch countless burnings, began to doubt their master. Though they feared his wrath, they began to imagine a Sicily without the tyrant's shadow. Meanwhile, Phalaris remained blind to the hatred he nurtured. He believed the bull had secured his power forever. To him, its roar was proof that fear worked better than loyalty, and as long as men trembled, he was safe. But the bull was not only a weapon, it was a curse. Every scream that came from its mouth planted seeds of vengeance. Every roar echoed in the hearts of the people, and the day was approaching when the bull would no longer serve its master, but consume him. Agrigentum became a city divided, the tyrant's soldiers armed and loyal, and the people, broken yet watchful. Tension coiled in every street, in every whisper. The fires of rebellion smoldered, waiting for the right spark. The bull gleamed in the square, its polished bronze reflecting the sun. To some it was the tyrant's strength. To others it was a promise that one day its fire would turn on Phalaris himself. And so while the beast roared with the agony of countless victims, the silence of the people deepened. They watched, they endured, they remembered. For tyranny, fed by fire, must, in time, burn itself away. The Brazen Bull stood as both executioner and prophecy. Its flames devoured the innocent, but its shadow whispered of justice yet to come. The tyrant believed it immortal. The people believed it cursed. And somewhere in the silence between screams, destiny began to move. The roar of the bull would not always serve the tyrant. The time was coming when it would turn against him, and the fire he had kindled would consume his throne. The years of terror could not last forever. Beneath the marble and bronze of Agrigentum, the hatred of the people simmered. Every family touched by the bull carried grief in their hearts, and grief turned to rage. The city, once silent in fear, began to murmur in secret. Phalaris had grown careless. He trusted too much in the bull, in the fear it inspired. He believed no man dared rise against him, no woman dared whisper rebellion. But tyranny blinds its master, and Phalaris did not see the tide turning against him. The bull had devoured too many. Sons, daughters, lovers, soldiers. Each scream that poured from its mouth was remembered. The pipes had twisted agony into the roar of a beast, but the people heard the truth beneath the sound. They heard human voices crying for justice. Even the tyrant's closest advisors began to waver. Once loyal, they now felt shame for serving him. The smoke of countless burnings clung to their memories. They knew the city could not endure forever under the shadow of the bull. When the chance came, it arrived not in shouts but in silence. A coup was planned in the shadows, whispered from soldier to soldier, noble to noble. It was said aloud in only one place, the square where the bull stood, gleaming under the sun, waiting for its master's end. The revolt erupted suddenly. Phalaris, thinking himself secure, was caught unprepared. His palace gates fell under the weight of his own guards, who turned their blades against him. The city that had trembled now surged with fury, and the tyrant was dragged into the streets. For the first time, the people saw Phalaris not as an untouchable ruler, but as a man, weak, desperate, pleading. His voice cracked as he demanded loyalty, but the crowd spat at him. They had given him their fear for too long, now they gave him their vengeance. The bull loomed over the square, its bronze sides glistening. How many had perished within it? How many voices had cried from its mouth? The crowd knew the answer, though no tally could ever match the weight of its crimes. The decision was made with one voice. Phalaris would face his own invention. The people would feed the tyrant to the beast he had worshipped. Justice would not be hidden, it would roar for all to hear. Dragged before the bull, Phalaris fought like a cornered animal. He cursed, he begged, he promised gold and mercy. But the soldiers who once obeyed his every word now shoved him forward with iron grips. His pleas rang hollow against the memory of screams he had ignored. The door of the bull creaked open, its hollow belly waiting. For the first time, Phalaris saw it as his victims had seen it, not as a symbol of power, but as a tomb. His face twisted in terror as he was forced inside. The door slammed shut. The tyrant was sealed within the bronze beast, just as so many had been before him. The crowd pressed closer, silent, waiting for the moment they had dreamed of. The fire was lit beneath the belly of the bull. Flames leapt high, crackling against the bronze. Inside, Phalaris felt the air thicken with heat. His screams rose almost at once, frantic, inhuman. The pipes carried his cries outward, twisting them into the roar of a beast. For the first time, the bull bellowed with the voice of its master. The crowd watched, their faces lit by firelight. For years they had endured the agony of their kin. Now they listened as the tyrant suffered the same fate. The bull roared, and the people did not turn away. They stood and bore witness. The heat grew unbearable inside. Phalaris writhed, his skin blistering, his breath searing his lungs. He screamed again and again, but his voice was no longer his own. It thundered from the bull's mouth, as though the beast itself were crying out in judgment. The people did not weep. They did not shudder. For once the sound was not horror, it was release. The same roar that had once silenced them now gave them strength. The bull's voice, twisted and monstrous, became a song of vengeance. Phalaris's body convulsed as the bronze grew red-hot. The smell of burning flesh rose into the air, drifting over the square. The people inhaled the stench of justice, bitter and heavy, but they did not look away. At last the bull's roaring began to fade. The tyrant's strength ebbed with the heat, his voice weakening into broken gasps. Soon, only the crackle of fire remained, and silence fell upon the square. The beast stood still, its belly glowing, its master consumed. When the door was opened, smoke poured out in heavy waves. What remained of Phalaris was unrecognizable, a blackened shell where once a tyrant had stood. The crowd saw it, and they knew the curse of the bull had ended. The bronze beast, once a symbol of terror, now stood as the instrument of justice. The people gathered wood and oil, feeding the flames until the bull itself began to crack and melt. They would not let it stand again. The bull would die with its master. As the fire consumed it, the beast groaned and split. The polished bronze that had gleamed so proudly now sagged and twisted. Sparks flew into the air as though the screams of the past were being released, carried away by smoke. By dawn, only fragments remained. The bull, once the tyrant's pride, was nothing but ash and molten bronze. The square where it had stood was empty, cleansed by fire, its shadow gone. The people of Agrigentum walked freely again. For the first time in years, their voices rose not in screams but in laughter, prayer and song. The tyranny of Phalaris had ended, devoured by the very beast he had unleashed upon them. The story of the Brazen Bull spread far beyond Sicily. It became a warning whispered through generations. Cruelty devours itself, and those who build instruments of terror may one day face them. The bronze bull was gone, but its memory endured. Not as the pride of a tyrant, but as the proof that even the strongest fire burns out, and even the loudest roar fades into silence.